Finance Minister Dr. Ato Forson is expected to present the mid-year budget to Parliament on the 24th of this month. And I mean, civil society have been raising some questions. We've seen inflation being reduced drastically to 13.7%, but there are some concerns these civil societies are pushing government to find lasting solutions to. Now, speaking to the coordinator of the economic governance platform, he's been speaking to the fact that government need to do more to ensure that food inflation is being cut down, even though we see the general inflation being stand at some 13.7%.
Our general observation, as many can attest to it, is that the macroeconomic environment is improving. We've seen inflation declining. We've also observed that the exchange rate has stabilized, the cedi has strengthened considerably. So it makes our imports much cheaper, but of course it also has its side effect of affecting our export, making our export more expensive. So we are asking government to lay down some more sustainable strategies that will consolidate the gains that we have made. But particularly I want to focus on the issue of inflation. I mean, even though headline inflation has declined, if you dig deep down further, you realize that food inflation is still up there, and for that matter, many people are still feeling the pinch of the economic what they call distress that we have that we are coming out of. So and given the fact that majority of Ghanaians spend about 40% of their income on food, I think it is something that the government needs to pay attention so that our investments in agriculture will yield the necessary results and ease the difficulty of the citizenry. Then we also want to talk about the levy, that's the 1 cedi on the litre that the government has introduced. We realize that there's no sunset clause. We don't have any specific timeline that the government intends to do this. If you look in our history, it has become the easiest, and I must say the laziest way by which government always tries to raise revenue to address energy sector inefficiencies. We've had the experience of President Kufuor's regime where we started paying the toll recovery levy, and we are still paying it till today. Under the previous John Mahama administration, they introduced the ESLA levy that we have been paying. We thought it was going to be short-lived, but we are still paying it. So now that we are having another levy, we need to have clarity on the timelines. How long is this levy going to be there? So that it does not become a permanent feature when it comes to the price of fuels that we buy in this country. Because when fuel prices increase, it affects a lot of goods and services, and so we want to have some ease in that direction. So you will appreciate the fact that in terms of Feed Ghana, it is in its very initial stages. It is now that government, the program has started, cultivation is underway, and so we don't expect that the food prices would have reduced immediately. What we expect is that for the kind of food that we import, because Ghana imports a lot of food as well, and when the exchange rate has the cedi has strengthened and it has stabilized to that extent, you expect that the imported food prices will come down and it will ease the pressure on consumers. So we want to see some visible reduction in the cost of food for that matter.
Now, within the petroleum sector, policy lead at the African Center for Energy Policy, Kojo Yaoche, has also been speaking to the fact that there is a need to repeal the MIF Act and replace it with the Mineral Management Revenue Act.
Yeah, so the 2025 budget did indicate that we were going to amend the MIF Act to reallocate 80% of mineral royalties to the consolidated fund for infrastructure expenditure, which we have been fighting for, that MIF shouldn't exist. So the point we were making was that the MIF Act should be repealed, right, so that MIF will cease to exist. But in place of that, we are asking for a Mineral Revenue Management Act, just like we have in the petroleum side, to provide some transparency and accountability guidelines on how mineral revenues are expended in the country, so that we are able to track what is happening with the revenues that accrue to the state for mining operations in the country. I think in the petroleum sector, the 2025 budget did indicate that the ABFA was going to be used for infrastructure development. And the PRMA was amended to that effect. But we are yet to see the infrastructure projects that have been earmarked for such expenditure. And the PRMA actually requires that all those expenditures have to be reported on. So the fact that it has gone into the consolidated fund doesn't mean that it shouldn't. So we are expecting more clarity on the sets of expenditures, the specific expenditures that the LBFA is going to be expended on. We also note that the amendment of the PRMA to allow the ABFA to be used for infrastructure expenditure inadvertently excluded funding for the activities of PIAC, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. So we are asking that we bring it back. We further amend the PRMA to bring it back, because the amendment also did make allocation for 5% to the District Assembly's Common Fund. So if we are able to do that, we can do a similar thing for PIAC to be able to get funding, assured funding from that as well. We've heard also a lot of conversations about a second gas processing facility to complement what we have at Atuabo. And in the 2025 budget, that didn't find expression, but we are hoping that that would come for government to clearly indicate what the financing arrangements are for the plant, and also to give us an indication of what the committee, because there was a committee that was set up to advise government, what the committee proposed and what government has accepted as the way forward.
Budget Ghana, another civil society organization, is asking the Bank of Ghana to reduce the policy rate, which currently stands at 28%, to some 200 basis points. According to them, current inflation stands at 13.7%, hence the need for the Bank of Ghana to consider reducing policy rate.
Far so good. Government has made some, there's been some improvements along, the fiscal lines. Inflation is hanging around 13.7% right now, which is actually a fall from which at the end of the 2024 fiscal year, inflation was hanging around 23%, but currently, as at the end of June 2025, inflation was estimated at 13.7%. So at 13.7%, we see that that's an improvement. However, this reduction in inflation has not reflected in monetary policy rate. Monetary policy rate still remains very high. I think it's around 28%, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a problem. If your monetary policy rate is not reflecting a drop in inflation, then we see that there is an issue over there. Yes. So personally, I'll call for government to bring in more reforms that can actually tackle this issue. Furthermore, we are looking at issue around cost of goods and services. Even following the reduction in inflation, cost of goods and services still remain high. What the reduction in inflation has resulted in is a slowdown in the increment of prices.
These civil society organizations are asking government to ensure some transparency with respect to its policy, like the Big Push and also Feed Ghana, to ensure that various sectors or problems within these sectors are being addressed keenly. For Joy Business, James Eshen.